We're going to be continuing on with our study of different disciples. We've already covered a few of the disciples. We covered James the less. We talked about sometimes we need to become less so Christ can become more. We talked about John, the disciple that Jesus loved. We talked about how he went on and wrote much about God's love for us, and really it was in a strange time where people didn't really understand the God that loved them as opposed to they were supposed to do for gods or for the gods that they worship. It was kind of a new concept, but he wrote that John 3:16 that we see all over the place, became famous. Last week we talked about Peter the what? Rock. Right? You remember that? Peter the Rock? And we talked about how he had denied Christ, but then was revived and went on to do great things. And that God, even in our failures, can use us to do, well, great stuff, right? That he has a plan for us as well, just like he had a plan for Peter. Well, today we're going to talk about another disciple. Many of you saw that Robin Williams passed this week. And I love Robin Williams. I thought he was a great comedian. He was just a genius. I mean, and I hate to see someone who made so many people smile couldn't make himself smile. It's just tragic. But the thing I love about Robin Williams, he was so random. You know, and you can ask Pam, I'm kind of random myself a lot of times. So maybe that's why I loved his comedy so much. But he was just kind of random. And you know, today's selection, for Jesus makes the selection of Matthew, is kind of random. It doesn't fit the mold. You know, he's invited these other people, these fishermen, and everyday folk. He's inviting a tax collector to join. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I mean, tax collectors are probably the most unlikely person that you would think that Jesus would invite into his group. I mean, I can tell you that no Jewish parent raised children saying, my child's going to grow up and be a publican. He's going to grow up and be a tax collector. I'm so proud. He's going to steal money from you.
Yeah.
It's okay. Nobody grew up like that, I can tell you. He was a disappointment probably to his parents and to his family. His people didn't like publicans. They were not well thought of at all. We see through the scriptures publicans are often grouped with harlots and sinners. They're low on the totem pole, folks. And that's who Jesus picked today. Matthew. In the book of Luke, he's referred to as Levi. And some of you may know him by that name. But they're the same person. And Levi would represent, means join. It would represent the tribe that he came from, which is a tribe of priesthood. And children in that particular tribe would hope to grow up, their parents would hope they would grow up and be priests, not publicans. So you can see where it was a little bit probably of a disappointment when he grew up and became a publican. Now, what was a publican? The Romans had what they call, they farmed out their taxes. In other words, you had a main, they would come up with a budget for a district, kind of like they do now. They said, we need, say, $50,000 out of this district. And then people would bid to be the tax collector. And the highest bidder got it, and he would be in charge of collecting taxes from that district. Now, there was no clear thing like we're going to get 6% sales tax or 2% property tax. There wasn't any of that. It was kind of like whatever they wanted to charge. And they would go around and they would search your stuff, see what you had. So they could open up your bags. You think the airport's rough. I mean, these folks, and they would go through and they would see what you had. And then they would tax you pretty much however they felt. And some may have been honest, but most were not. Most were dishonest. And they made a lot of money for themselves. Remember, we had the story of Zacchaeus, right? And he was a very wealthy man. And most publicans were the same way. They overcharged people, overtaxed people. And so, therefore, they were not well liked. Not by the Jewish people, And they weren't liked by the Romans because they were Jewish. They weren't Romans, they were Jewish people. So they kind of had no home. So it doesn't really make sense that Jesus would pick this tax collector to be one of his disciples. He wasn't liked by anybody, really. I mean, besides his fellow publicans and maybe some sinners. So why did Jesus pick this low of low? This bottom of the barrel? This man who wasn't even allowed to worship in the temple or the synagogue. Tax collectors were excommunicated from the Jewish church. They couldn't be witnesses. I mean, are you getting the picture? This is a guy nobody likes, right? Nobody cares about. Somebody you didn't want to socialize with, right? Somebody you didn't want to be seen with. Certainly somebody you wouldn't invite to church, right? This was that guy. Yet Jesus, what? Says, come, follow me. Why would Jesus invite this rich man, this who's not well liked, to become a disciple? It wasn't for the money. We're told in the book of Luke, he left everything he had and followed Christ. So he had a good job, made lots of money, but he left it. He left it all. He just walked away from it. That's commitment. Because when you're not liked by anybody, you don't have a lot of job prospects if things don't work out. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you have nothing to go back to. I mean, when you walk away from being a tax collector, you're not you have nothing. But that's what he did. He was all in. He was totally committed. Charles talked about being totally committed this morning in Sunday school. He was that. He was the pig. You know, he was all in. He provided the ham. You know, he's totally committed to Christ. And he probably didn't have it all figured out. And he probably didn't really know who Christ was. But he knew there was something special there. He knew there was something special. So he gave up his job. He gave up everything he had, a place of luxury. And he followed Christ. He knew the church people said, you can't worship here. We don't want you. You're dirty. You're a thief. You're no good. You're rotten. You're bad. That's what the church people told him of those days. But Jesus said, no. Come on. Follow me. You see, God sees beyond a person's occupation or their social standing or what they do. God sees into a man's heart. And what he saw in Matthew was somebody who could be taught. Somebody who loved God. Even though he wasn't a part of the church. He knew his scripture. We know somebody who would be committed to him. Somebody who would later on die as a martyr in Ethiopia. He saw all that. You know, so often we judge the external. We look and we see how somebody's clothed. We make a judgment. Right. Sometimes we make judgments on the color of a person's skin, or how they act, or what they're doing at this particular moment, this snapshot of life. We make these judgments. And I have to tell you, our lenses probably aren't that clear. We judge normal by what? What's normal to us? What's normal to me may not be normal to you. Right? We all have our biases. We all have our own lenses that we look at to judge what's normal. Right? But as far as I know, normal is just a setting on a washing machine. That's the only normal I know. We're all different. We're all a little peculiar and strange and in our own way. None of us are perfectly normal. Do you know any normal people? Do you know any normal based on what's normal to you? a lot of abnormal people in this world, if you really look at them. I mean, because, I mean, what, I remember David Ring, and I've spoken to him before as a pastor, and he has cerebral palsy, and he walks with a limp, and he preaches all the time, but he walks with a limp, he talks with a speech impediment, and somebody said, you know, don't you want to be normal? And he said, what's normal? He said, I'm wonderfully made by God. He said, and God doesn't say, oops. He made me just the way I am, and this is the way I am. He said, I can tell by looking at y'all that he came really close to saying oops a couple times. But God doesn't say oops. But we all judge people, right, by what we think is normal, which is a clouded lens. It reminds me of the story of a young couple who had moved into a new house, and as they sat at their breakfast table, looking out the window, the girl looked at the lady across the street. She was hanging out clothes. And she said, look how dirty her clothes are. She must not know how to either. She don't have a good washing machine, or she's not using the right detergent. Somebody needs to teach her how to wash clothes. Those clothes ain't clean. Well, the husband just sat there, shook his head, didn't say anything. And every time they'd sit down to the table, and the woman happened to be hanging out her clothes, she would say the same thing. Look, those clothes are so dirty. Says, yeah, I wish somebody would tell her about some soap, or some different soap, because it's amazing. Those clothes just ain't clean. Finally, a morning came where she got up and she looked at it, she goes, look at those clothes. They are so clean. Somebody must have taught her how to wash clothes. And she looked over at her husband. He was just shaking his head, said, no, I just got up 30 minutes early today and washed our windows. Sometimes our lenses are dirty. Sometimes we look at the wrong thing. You know, we're real quick to judge other people's dirt when it's our dirt that we need to be looking at. But God doesn't see that. God sees what's in a man's heart. And he knows what's in your heart. He knew what was in Matthew's heart. And he knew he had a great disciple in the making. And so he said, come, follow me, just as he says to you, come, follow me. And what's the first thing that we know Matthew does? Because really there's not a lot of writings about Matthew. What's the first thing, or maybe the only thing we know he does? He has a party. You know, he has a banquet. He has a big meal. He's got the money, he's got the means, and he has this big meal. And who comes? Pharisees come? All the good people? He invites all the upstanding people, right? That's not what it says. People who came were his friends, right? Other publicans, people he worked with, people who took from people, sinners came. People who weren't well liked. And what do the Pharisees say? Let's go back and read that. What do the Pharisees say? The Pharisees say this. They say, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? It's a sign. Why does he eat with tax collectors? And what did Jesus say? You remember? Jesus said, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I have come not to call the righteous, but the sinners. Jesus said he didn't want sacrifice. He came to be the sacrifice. He came to be the sacrifice for each and every one of us. And Matthew was doing what came natural. That was his way of getting the word out. Now, how would be the best way for you to get the word out? To invite people into your home, right? To invite people in to meet Jesus. What's wrong with that? That's what we're called to do. That's what disciples are supposed to do. Come, I have some good news I want to share with you. Come meet this fellow named Jesus. Come meet my Lord and Savior. Come meet the person who's lifted me up out of the bondage of sin and has redeemed me, the man I call my Savior. Come meet him. Come meet Jesus Christ. You see, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Each and every one of us. We're supposed to be inviting people in. Now, we don't have a party to go to. We have a party here every Sunday. Right? Starts about 10 o'clock. Then after that, we have another party. Starts at 11. We have two parties on Sunday you can come to, and you can invite people to come to meet this guy, to meet this fella. He called me. I'm a sinner, and I'm a tax collector, and nobody wants anything to do, but he wants something to do with me. He loves me even in my sin. He loves me even though I'm not perfect, even though I still have a long way to go. He loves me. So how do you spread that message? That's my question to you. How do you do it? You show it in your daily walk.
You let your light shine.
Do you let your light shine? That's right. Are you that spark? Are you that light in the darkness? Are you that hope that someone needs? Are you that phone call? Are you that hug? Are you that smile, like we told the children? Sometimes it's easy as a smile. Smiles are so contagious, and so are grumpy faces. But I tell you what, when you smile at somebody, I tell you what, they start smiling back, or they start wondering what's going on with that person. You know? Why are they smiling? You know, smiles are contagious. That's easy stuff. That's easy stuff. I'll tell you a story about a man, because I do think we are called on to spread this word, to be a reflection of our Lord and Savior, and the love that he represents in our lives, and the changes he made. And there was a great story I read this week. It took place started in World War II. And the German paratroopers invaded the island of Crete in Greece. And they were met by the villagers who carried kitchen knives and hay sickles against German machine guns, and it obviously didn't turn out well for the occupants of the village. They were lined up and shot and killed. Well, years later, there was a young man by the name of Alexander Papadouros. And he wanted to do something to commemorate that moment in history, but also because he felt like we needed to end this legacy of hatred. And so he created this institute on that place to honor those who died, but also to talk about how we need to love one another and how we need to be at peace with one another. And he would give talks, and he would tell the story, and people would show up, and they would show up for his lectures. And he was giving a lecture one day. And at the end of the lecture, he said, "Are there any questions?" Those of you who ever attended, any questions? And there was that silence, because nobody, everybody just wanted to get out of there, right? So there's that silence. Any questions? No questions. And somebody said, "What's the meaning of life?" And of course, there was snickers across the room. Who knows the meaning of life? Well, what's the meaning of life? And he looked up, and because he wanted to see if the question was real or not. Are you being serious? Is that you really want to know what the meaning of life is, or are you just making a joke? And he looked at the gentleman who asked the question, and he decided he'd go ahead and answer it. He said, "Let me tell you what the meaning of life is." He said, "When I was a small boy, I was walking along the road, and there had been a wrecked motorcycle from the German troops, and the side mirror, or the mirror, had been busted. It was on the ground. I picked up the biggest piece I could find, and I began to scratch it on a stone. And I scratched it, and I scratched it until finally it was round. Kind of like that. Just a round piece of mirror." He said, "As a child, I used to try to catch the light and to shine it into dark places. And I used to make a game of it to see how dark a place I could get the light. I would reflect the light into the darkest, deepest crevices I could find. He said, and I kept that mirror as I grew into an adult. And in college, I would often, when I got bored, I would take the mirror out. And again, I would continue the game, and I would try to catch the light and try to shine it into dark crevices. Have you ever played that game? Some of you have played with reflective eye, some of you probably did it to teachers, you know, where you would catch it, and you would try to catch it, reflect the light into their faces, and they'd be like, but maybe you played this as a child. That's what he did. He said, and I would do that as an adult. He said, and as I grew older, I began to realize that it was more than just a game. It was a metaphor for life. He said, I realize that I'm not the source of the light, but I am the reflector of the light. That the light, the truth, the understanding, the love of Jesus Christ, that's the light. My job is to reflect it, to catch the light and reflect it into those dark places. Those places where people don't know Christ. Those dark places, those dark hearts where people have no idea who Jesus Christ is and the love that he has for them. That's my job. That's what I'm about. That's what the world should be about. It's about catching the light and reflecting it to those dark places. What do you think? We're Christians. What should we be about? Should we be about reflecting that light? Showing others through our actions, through our words, how we treat people, who we are. What does the song say? They'll know we are Christians by what? Our love, right? How about you? Do they know you're Christians by your love? If you were being put on trial for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Or would you be acquitted? You know, it is our commitment to be those reflectors. And what I've done today is I brought one of these for each of you. Because I want you to carry it with you. Like the children carry smiley faces. I want you to carry it with you because I want you to remember that each and every day, not in here, it doesn't, what goes on in here is one thing. It's what goes on through those doors. That's what's important. That's what's life-changing. That even the tax collectors, the people who've done us wrong, people that in our eyes, through our windows, we don't think are worthy, God calls us to love them too. That's hard to do, isn't it? You know, but when you say that person's not worthy, let me tell you what you're doing. Real quick. Let me tell you what you're doing. When you say, you know, that person's so bad, God can never save them. Are you being serious? Are you being serious? Are you making God that small? My God's not that small. I worship a big God. And there's no sin, there's no amount of badness that he can't overcome. Please don't make your God that small. Worship a big God. A God that can take a tax collector, can take a sinner, because he took us all. Right? We're all sinners, just some of us realize it. That's the only difference. Some of us realize we need a Savior, some of us don't. And our job is to show them what a Savior looks like. To give that person hope. To give them hope in a world that's lost. To shine, what? To be a reflector of the light into the dark places. Will you do that? I see four heads nodding. One of them I think is asleep. But will you, seriously now, I'm closing up here, so give me your attention. Will you commit to do that? I mean, I'm asking a serious question. Will you commit to being a reflector of that light? Yes? Are you committed? Are you? If you are, I want you to come forward right now and get a mirror.